What if we can positively impact society by reshaping the mindsets of young men? And while we're at it, let me ask you, what does it mean to be a man? My name is Dennis Morolda, a father, a teacher, a coach, a mentor, and a principal with over 2 decades of experience shaping the minds and characters of young men across the United States. If these questions resonate, if you're a young man looking to improve your life or a parent looking for tools to help your son become the best version of himself, the Building Men podcast was created for you. What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Building Men podcast, or welcome back if you are a long-time listener. As always, I'm your host, Dennis Morolda, and my guest today is a repeat guy. Had him on in April of 2021, so a while ago. Looks exactly the same. Good-looking dude. You know, this is an audio, but if you gotta check out the video on this as well. Ryan's a good looking guy. His name is Ryan Derstine. He's the owner of Train for Life. It's a private strength and conditioning facility. He does one-on-one coaching in person and online. He loves being outdoors. He's got twin boys we'll talk about today. He's an ultra endurance athlete, and he's just a badass dude. Love talking to him. And the name of the podcast that he was on the last time, hold on, let me pull it up. It was Ignoring What Comes After the Butt, ... zombie workouts and embracing the suck. I was better at doing titles back in the day. So first I have to give, I gotta get back into it. I gotta come up with a more creative way to title the podcast. Ryan, what's up, man? Good to see you, brother.
Good to see you too, man. Good to be back.
Yeah. So if you haven't listened to that episode, go back in time and listen. You get a little bit of a backstory about Ryan, his experience in MMA as a personal trainer, his work with the Special Olympics. So that'll give you more of an idea about who he is. We're not going to do the whole backstory thing. So go back and check that episode out. So let's start with what's been going on in your life since the last time that we talked. So it was a couple years ago. I mean, you've done a lot of these endurance ultra races. You've done the Ironman. So tell us a little bit about business and what's going on in your life.
Well, it's been, I think last time it was kind of height right in the middle, like pandemic-ish.
Yeah.
So things have, in my eyes, kind of gotten back to normal for the most part. So it's made in-person training a lot more doable. But no, I mean, things have stayed the same. Work is busy. Um, Shifted kind of a lot of going from physical training to diving into a lot of with clients, the mental part of it, psychological part of it.
Yeah.
Overall health isn't. When I started as a young trainer, it was more of get people in shape physically. The older I get, you understand the balance between mind and body, and really kind of having a place where people can be comfortable talking about just about anything, and then working through a physical workout as a way of strengthening that reserve. But I mean, as far as last 3 years, kids are 10 years old. We're skiing as often as we can up here. We're hiking, we're biking, we're doing everything. But business is the same. Passionate about what we do, and we're just trying to, like I said, slow things down as much as you can with kids.
Yeah.
But getting them out and trying to run them tired as much as we can.
To learn more about our programs, including one-on-one mentorship coaching, the foundation, our Building Men online group community for young men, or to bring a Building Men experience to your school, check out our website, buildingmen.io, or click the links in the bio. Now, back to the show. 100%. And just the active, like getting the boys active and moving around, it's such a huge part.
For sure.
And what you said also resonated with me. So right now my son is 18, he'll be 19 really soon. I have a daughter who's 16 and a daughter who's 13. And my son who's going to be 19 years old, he's a freshman in college at the University of Delaware, and he's back for his winter break. And for some reason, University of Delaware, they have this long ass winter break. He came back mid-December and he's still here.
Yeah.
And it's the end of January, beginning of February right now. So we'll take him back to school in February. And it was really cool just him being around and seeing the maturity that transpired with him over the last several months being away, and he would talk very openly with me about the stupid shit that he did, but also the lessons that he learned during that time away. But I also recognize, that the time that you have with your kids when they're young, it's such a finite thing. And I tell parents all the time, the lessons are caught and not taught. So when you have that time, are you sitting in front of your phone just, scroll holing through whatever's there, or Netflix binge watching, or just sitting in
Hmm.
front of the TV with, a six pack of beers? Or are you
Yep.
taking that time to get out and be active with your kids? So I think that's awesome that you're doing a lot of active things. So talk to us a little bit about daily stuff that you do with your boys. They're 10 years old right now. You mentioned some hiking, some things. Do you have a schedule like, okay, boys, on Monday we're after school, we're gonna go for a hike. On Tuesday, we're going bike riding. On Thursday, we're gonna play football. Or is it just like, hey dad, let's go and run around, and
Eh,
like, all right, let's do it.
I mean, obviously, I think with school things are different. You know,
Yeah.
they do piano that they do on Tuesday nights. We got to go to a lesson. They both play another instrument. They got obviously homework gets more and more. The weekends are kind of where we do all of our as I call it, the fun outdoor stuff.
Yeah.
But during the week we still have our routine. We get them up at the same time. They're responsible for packing their lunches. I got this nice Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I go in later. Tuesday, Thursday, my wife goes in later.
Okay.
So we live about just over half a mile from the school, and so we started about a year ago. We started walking to school. I told the boys, well, we can always walk, and it's turned into they wanted to a couple days a week, and now we haven't taken the bus to school in over a year. And it's a 10-minute walk, but it's every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I know I'm walking with my boys, and I know come next year, fifth grade, they're going to be able to ride bikes to school. So this could be my last, those 10 minutes with just me and the two boys.
Yeah.
To me, those are precious. And I can, they throw around ideas. Their minds are going a million different directions. They're telling me, dad, dad, dad. And then they're going back with, what they're going to do. And I just kind of soak it in. And every time I drop them off, I give them a hug, tell them I love them. And as I'm walking home, I try to, like you said, stay present, not
Yeah.
on your devices, and take it all in. And every walk home, I say, this is one less walk home that I'm going to get, with these kids. And as they get older, it turns into their first drives. And like, as
Yeah.
you, the 6 foot, but every age is great, but I do try to stay grounded and present and just be in the moment now. And on the weekends, if it's nice, they know we're either going hiking. In the summertime, we might go mountain biking. We have a couple really nice trail systems around the area. Um, or we have a creek in the backyard, so we let them run through the creek. We were running through the creek a couple days ago, and it was 35 degrees. It's never too cold, never too hot, but we just try to encourage, obviously schoolwork, but after that it's get outside. Outside, I think, is just it's nature's therapists.
Yeah.
And there's something calming about getting outside, connecting with nature. And there's like I said, that calming effect to it. So
I love the walk to and from school. For me, my kids are now old enough to where they're driving to school, or their friends are taking them to school. Or my one daughter, she's unable to walk because there's a highway in the middle, so she takes the bus to school. But for me, every morning, I'm a get up and I'm walking as the sun's coming up,
mm,
and it's such a powerful thing for me. It's my time. I don't need to listen to anything. I just go, and that's my time to think. But for you, walking your boys to school, not only is it that experience for them, but you're also, inadvertently you're getting a half mile there, half mile back. So that's an extra mile a day, 3 miles a week, 150 miles a year,
sure.
additional walking time, rather than just getting in the car with a cup of
Mhm.
coffee, putting on Sports Center on whatever. It's, that's,
Yep.
there's that time as well. I
Mhm.
think that's amazing. And the other thing that I heard that really resonated with me is you having that conversation with yourself on the walk back, Ryan, where you're like, this is one less time, right? Like there's a finite number of times you're going to walk your kids to and from school.
Yep.
To have that mindset is so, one, it's healthy to have that mindset, but then two, it's really powerful. We remember, those of you that are listening that have kids, right? We remember our kids' first word, their first steps, their first day of school, the first time that they hit a home run in Little League. Those are those things that we remember. We will never forget those. The things that we don't remember is the last time that something happens, because we don't know in the moment that it's the last time. The last time that your kid sits on your lap and is like, daddy, read me a story, the last time that you walk your kids home from school. And
Right.
as a dad, you hear the, cats in the cradle playing in the background. It can get you a little
Yeah.
bit choked up. But
Yep.
to intentionally think about it, dude, that's powerful. Have you always done that with your kids? Have you always been like, let me be present in this moment and think about it, let me soak this in? Or has that been more of a recent thing for you?
I would say within the last probably 3 years, just being here, grounded in the now. take, my mind, I was diagnosed ADD back when it was first going crazy 20, 30 years ago,
Right.
and every kid that couldn't sit still. So my mind has always been going in a million different directions. But for me, getting into the Ironman training, I had to learn to calm myself down, and use your mind as an ally instead of an enemy. With working out, your mind will either get you to quit or it can get you to keep going. But being present and in the moment, and just focusing on breathing, whether it's meditation, and I view meditation, you could have it in a million different ways. I have clients that say, "Well, I can't sit still and cross my legs and hum." I go, well, that's not always my meditation could be running for an hour at 5 a.m. when it's still dark. And that's when my mind goes. Same with you. I don't do music. I used to, but I enjoy the silence. I enjoy the sounds. It calms me down, and I'm constantly trying to improve, not just my physicality, but I've learned to really try to improve myself as a human being, and as a man, and as a father, and as a husband. And by being present, especially in today when we have so much technology
Right.
pulling for our attention, staying present is hard. It's really hard. You hear a beep or an alert, and the whole, when back when I said this, I got one less walk, and there's days where I thought, well, this could be the one last walk, because tomorrow isn't promised. An hour from now isn't promised.
Right.
And it's easy to say, but it's hard to put into practice. And you do catch yourself, getting distracted here and there, but to really try to pull yourself into the moment and say, when they're home from school and it's family time, they get all of me. They're not going to get dad on the phone and saying, dad, dad, dad. And I'm saying, give me 5 minutes. No, when they want me, I'm there. Sometimes it gets a little, dad, you're always running back, but no, I mean, a client told me, he said, you get a glass jar and you put 18, after every summer, you put a marble in there. You get 18 marbles if you have a kid. You get 18 years really until they're, and when my kids were 9, he goes, dude, you're halfway there.
Right.
And now they're 10. And he goes, and really, honestly, when they're 13, 14, they start to get to an age where they might not always want to be with you. They might want to go off with their friends. So
Yeah.
it could even be shorter than 18.
Yep.
So I look at that as, it doesn't sound like a lot, but from 0 to 10, it seems like it was a blink of an eye. And I know that they're getting to that age now where they're already starting to, walk them to school. They hug me, say I love you. But if a couple of their buddies are walking behind them, I go to give them, and they kind of like they look at their buddies.
Yeah.
And it's kind of,
Yep.
so I go, all right, come here. And then, but I know it. Those are going to be limited. So as often as I can, I try to just to give them all of my attention, and to give them my presence, my awareness. But that's really something, like I said, I've had to work on slowing my mind down to remain here and not get too far ahead. And that way, if you do, you miss what's right in front of you, which is really all you got. So
It's interesting too, and I appreciate you sharing that, Ryan. I heard something recently. I don't know where to give the credit to. It was something along these lines, though, and it was the amount of time. Like, you have 18 years with your kids, right, from the time that they're born until they go away to school or they get a job or they move out or whatever. And then you have, for the rest of their life, you basically will have one more year with them of like actual time that you're spending a full day with your kid. When you add up all the times as they're older
yeah,
with their families, it's like really like 365 more days with your kid, full days, unless it's like, Everybody Loves Raymond, where they're living right across the street or something.
right.
But that's the idea. And so for me, I try to like soak in all those moments. And the other thing I'll say too is, if you put in the effort, as with anything in life, if you put the effort in with your kids when they're 4, 6, 10, 12, 13, when they're 18, 19 years old, they're going to want to be with you. Right.
Oh
It's
yeah,
not going to be like, oh, dad's a pain in the ass, I don't want to be with that douchebag.
right.
Like, they'll look for it. And like, as my son came home from school, we went out for a cup of coffee this morning. There's a really cool spot right in town. They do they grind the beans there, and they do the
Oh yeah,
pour over stuff. And he's like, I really love that. And I said, before you go back to school, is there anything that you want to do? And he's like, I want to go and have a cup of coffee with you, dad.
yeah,
And so we sat there for like 2 hours this morning, just bullshitting or whatever. But
yeah,
I was like, the reason why he wants to do this is because when he was 10, I was doing the stuff that you're doing. Like, that's you put
yeah.
in the time then and there. And so I'm sure you'll see the same thing
That's awesome to hear. Yeah,
as your kids are older. Yeah. And the
yeah,
other thing that you said that it made me chuckle a little bit was the creek by your house, going outside and playing in the creek. When I was growing up, we had lived on a cul-de-sac, and there was a creek
Hmm.
by our house, and that's where we would go and play. And then behind it was a farm, and then deep back in the farm there was like an old junkyard with like an old school bus, and that was my childhood. Like I
Perfect.
I connect to Stranger Things to where I tell my kids, like in the 80s, that was really the thing. I mean, I didn't battle many demogorgons or like,
Yeah.
but I still,
Yeah.
that was the life that I was living. So with the creek,
Yeah.
we would go in the creek and catch frogs. And our thing, I remember growing up, our thing was, we thought if we found the end of the creek, we would get in the newspaper or get on the
Yeah.
news. And so every time we went a little bit
Yeah.
further on to see, and
Yep.
finally, like, wait, I can't even see the house anymore. We got to turn back. And so there
Yeah.
was always this eternal dialogue.
Yep.
So with your kids, well, first of all, take me back in time for yourself. I would love to hear a little bit about who you were when you were around your kids' age. So, take a spot back, and or even middle school or whatever. Who was Ryan like back then? Tell us a story
Literally
about that.
the same you described. I mean, we
Yeah.
had a creek. I was fortunate. I lived on a road that was Derstine Road. Same as my last name. My grandparents, my uncles, my great uncles. We had a lot of us that lived on the same road, and we had the same thing. We had a creek that connected all the homes. So I caught garter snakes,
Oh
crayfish.
yeah.
I got my first dirt bike when I was 12, 13. We had fields we would rip around. There was neighbor kids across the street. It was different times. Now it's been all developed. But back then it was, we sound like the old guys saying, I'd run out. My mom had to drag me in to eat.
Yeah.
All I wanted to do was be out. There was a shop behind my house. My grandfather owned a truck shop, and on the weekends, if it was empty, we'd go inside. It was the same thing. That was like it was a playground, and you would
Yeah.
explore and you'd climb things. You'd get into some things you might not supposed to be, getting into. Um, but it was, my dad built this handmade tree house, which was incredible. I think back to it now, and I'm like, I could never construct something the way he did it. But he had this tree house. He built this big platform then next to it with a huge rope swing where we would go way up, and he just took a 5 gallon bucket, cut the bottom off, and that was our seat. And that was, we would climb into trees to see if we could even get higher to launch ourselves
Right.
out. And it was crazy. I mean, it was in that, but that was, we had friends nearby, cousins nearby. We could ride our bikes on the street to their houses, without worrying about the traffic we have today. But I mean, it was what I think kids, especially boys, need today, which was go out and run the hell out of them into the ground and get that energy out. And that's what we did, and that's what the boys do, and that's where you pass on what you're passionate about. And I see my kids now, and we'll go walking in the creek and we'll splash around, and it's raining and 40 degrees, and there's nobody else out there. But where people see us and they go, they're kind of like the boys are soaking wet, they're shivering, but I go, we're gonna get back. They'll take a hot bath and they'll feel better.
Right.
But to me, that's what being a kid and just free spirited, and with a sense of letting them go far, but not too far, and letting them experience things. They get cold, they get cold. They get dirty, they get dirty. They fall, they get a cut, they get a cut. And it's just a matter of you got to let them have those experiences. And with my parents growing up, having that kind of free range and having the fields and the streams and all that stuff, to me that was just that was what being a kid was all about. So doing that with my kids now, hiking up the little mountains around here, letting them go explore into the rocks. If they find a little rock cave, I say go ahead, and like just that creative intuition they want, just let them run free with it. So
There's so much of that missing. Where we live, I look outside and kids are not outside playing.
yeah.
Like you don't hear that anymore. And to give your kids the opportunity to just go out and do the stuff, right? The swing with the bucket.
Yeah.
Parents would be like, well, what if they fall? Well, what if they fly?
Yeah.
What if they keep going? What if they have a blast doing it? And then if they fall, they'll make an adjustment.
Yeah.
Like life will be the teacher. So
Exactly.
if they hit into the tree, all right, they got hurt. All right, I need to adjust a little bit more to the left to avoid that tree in the
Yep.
future, and it gives them an opportunity to learn from all those mistakes.
It teaches them. That's what, like you said, that's what life is. That's what, going to school. You're not going to take every test, get 100. If you get a bad grade, you got to make adjustments, whether how you study. You get a job, you're not going to be great at your job right away. You're going to have to, you get a negative review, you got to make it. I mean, life's all about adjustments and learning to, learning to succeed. You succeed, but obviously I mean, you fail if you're going to succeed, you're going to fail a shit ton in the beginning, and you better get used to it. And the earlier you can get your kids used to that little taste of
Yeah.
failure, the better, and that's because it's part of life. Like you said, you're going to hit the tree, or you're gonna come up short. You're gonna have a bad day, but you know what? You make adjustments, you learn, and you hopefully do better the next time. So
It's interesting as a principal. For me, it was really important that the kids had recess. So middle schools is that's typically when they take recess away from the kids. And the kids, when
yeah,
they're in the adolescent, early teenage years, they need to move their ass. They need to get outside. They need to play. They need to do those things to compete. And so all my kids in my school had recess, fifth through eighth grade. And I remember this as you were talking, it brought up a memory for me. It was in the middle of winter, right? So it's January and it's, in the high 20s or mid 20s. And we were getting outside. It's going to be cold. We're getting outside. We'd let the kids know it's cold out today. And I would have the lunch aides or the recess aides bring like 4 or 5 boys into the office demanding a consequence for them. And I'm like, why are they? Did they do something? Did they hurt someone in the recess? Were they being assholes? Like, what was the deal? And they're like,
right,
they don't have their coats on. And I was like, okay, so what? Well, it's cold outside and they need their coats on. They need a consequence. And I'm like, cold is the consequence.
yeah,
That's it. Like them
yeah,
being cold, that's the consequence. And if they're like they're able to deal with that cold, back off. Like
yeah.
let them deal
No,
with it. It's crazy that parents were, and these were lunch aides that they were getting paid like a minimum wage thing. I get
right.
it. They were trying to, they didn't want the kids to be colder. That's the
Hmm.
consequence. Let them deal
Yeah,
with that natural consequence of coldness. And then if they're cold, they'll put their jacket on.
for sure. No, for sure. That's the same. We walked to school, and 2 weeks ago we had a cold, burst up here where it was
Yeah.
in the negatives, and we had to go. We walked to school. Like I said, cold doesn't make you take the bus, and they don't want us. So whether it rains, whatever, we never take the bus to school. So we walked. It was cold. Grant had to carry his saxophone. I said, "Put your gloves on and your hat on." He put his hat on. He says, "I don't need my gloves." I said, "It's cold out there." He stuck his head outside real for like 2 seconds. It's not cold. And I said,
All
"Okay,
right.
fine. Go ahead." We got like not even out of the development. And he's like, "Dad, can you carry my saxophone?" I said, "Why?" And you do I said, "Are your hands cold?" And he kind of gave me this look, and I go, "Your hands are freezing, aren't they?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, and Natalie will have the same thing. She says, put some shoes on. You can't wear Crocs outside. It's 20. And they go, "No, we can, because we'll take walks after dinner still, no matter how cold it is." And they'll say, and I'll say, let them learn. I go, "You're gonna go out there bare feet
Yes.
with Crocs on, and it's 20. Like, there's no better teacher than being uncomfortable. Go out there, okay? And then the next time they'll know. So let them learn. There's nothing wrong with that. So
Parenting 101 right there. So if you're a
yeah,
parent, like let your kids struggle with stuff like that and don't like you want to set the stage for success, give their kid advice. If they decide not to take it, then let them deal with it. And you
yep,
don't have to sit back and say, I told you so. What you say is, okay, is there anything that you learned from this that you would make an adjustment in some way, shape, or form
yep,
in the future? The last episode I mentioned that like part of the title was embracing the suck, right? Which I think is such a huge thing. We talk a lot about doing the hard things with intentionality or intentional discomfort, putting yourself in those uncomfortable situations and embracing the suck. It's you talked about it and it's become like a mantra that I have used at several other points in my life. So I wanted to give you credit for bringing
nice.
that idea into my life with your own kids. Is that something that you're intentional around talking to them about? I mean, you embrace intentional discomfort in your own life, your own training, in your own profession, but is that something that you're already talking to your kids about?
Yeah, they've been hiking since they were walking, and we go out there, and they got a lot smaller legs than me. And I think sometimes when we go hiking, and my wife has to remind me, she's like, "Ryan, these aren't paying clients, and you're not like
Right.
we're not paying you to like kick our ass right now." So I do, but we'll go walking, and they'll say, "Dad, my legs are hurting." And I said, "Okay, well, you see that tree? That's like 30 feet up. We'll go to that tree, then we're gonna get a break." And we go there, and then we take our break. And now they're getting longer and longer, and now they're not stopping. And we were walking the one time last summer, and Liam told me, he goes, "Dad," he goes, "my legs are getting really tired, and they're burning." And I didn't even. He goes, but I need to go a little further because if I keep going when they hurt, they're going to be stronger next time, right?
Yeah,
And then
wow.
I go and I said yes, and I told them that, and it relates to schoolwork as well. Every year, they're in fourth grade, homework's getting harder. And I told them, I said, I wasn't a fan of homework either. I struggled all through school. I go, but this is this is going to be hard, and you have to, regardless or not, and like you're going to have to do it. You got to dive head first into a hardship, and life is going to be about. And I tell them that, and I'll go. So their 10-year-old minds don't comprehend the way ours do, but the more you repeat it, and like you said that we talked about the previous time, things are caught, not taught.
Yeah.
You know, they pick up on things. So I know that if I can continuously, just feed them, say, look, I know you don't want to do this. Just give me 5 minutes. We're not going to do it. Let's just do 5 minutes and do a little bit. And we're going to do a little bit every day of something you don't want to do, but that in the long run, it's like my parents used to say, like, I'll thank you. And then we all hit a time in our lives when we go, like, our parents were right. Like,
Hmm.
like they knew what they were telling us about. They knew what they were talking to us about. And I figure you repeat it enough so that it gets embedded in their mind. And eventually someday, they will come back and be like, hey, dad, like, thanks. All that talk, it was with a purpose. So, um, but no, I mean, I try to to get them to lean into discomfort as much as they can. I mean, they are 10. So it is, kind of tricky, but for the most part, no. I mean, it's getting them to do things that say they don't want to do, because right now it's like when you're an adult, you make the calls, but now you gotta do it.
Yeah. It's how I end every podcast. The last line that I say is go one step further than you thought you could. It's you saying, go 5 more minutes or go that 30 feet to the tree. And I
Yep.
love what your son said too. I mean, that's it. It's a thing. I wrote down the burning is you getting stronger.
Yep.
Like that burning in your leg. I mean, you could look at it like, oh, this sucks. And again, going back to the title of the last episode, embracing the suck, like that burning is feedback that you're doing something that's making your leg stronger for the future. Do you have the ability to like push through that burn right
Well,
now?
that's funny because I equated the burn. I always tell, I said that the burning you get in your muscles, I said eventually that ignites a fire in your heart, in your mind, and
Wow.
in your soul. It translates to it. At first, it's going to burn, it's going to suck, but then when you start to push through a little bit more, and then you see you went to the next tree, or you went another mile
Yeah.
than you could. I go, all of a sudden, I said, you get that positive momentum going, and that's where you build that endurance. And it's not just muscular endurance, cardio, it's mental endurance. The ability to develop grit. And because life will inevitably throw hardship at you, regardless. It doesn't. It doesn't. It's not exclusive. It doesn't just pick certain people. Hardship comes for all of us,
Right.
and so when we talk about diving into that hardship, feel the fire. Go in there, push yourself to where you get that burn, and that's going to help. The more times you go into that fire, it's going to ignite that through the rest of you, and then your mind picks up where your body wants to stop, and vice versa. Your body can go when your mind wants to stop, but it's getting that fire kind of going all throughout within. Um, that I try to teach the kids as well is be passionate, and that's going to help you guys overcome that stuff in the future. So
Yep. And your kids right now, I mean, it seems like it's a really healthy one, a relationship with you, your wife, and your kids. You're setting the stage for success with these daily habits, getting outside, moving, having conversations with your kids. But you're starting to notice, like you said, as you're dropping them off at school, they're looking over at their buddies standing there like, oh, I'm gonna give my dad a hug and a kiss. Am I gonna my balls busted when I go over there? Like, oh, give me a kiss, daddy. Like
yep.
that's something that you start to think about now. The same thing will be true with technology, right? It's if it's not a thing yet, if they're not already asking for it, that'll be something that it's on the horizon for you.
Sure.
So talk to us a little bit about your thoughts around, kids, the age they are when they should be, using technology, and then how about social media? What are your feelings around that?
I mean, I guess years ago I was considered one of the oddballs because I'd have people like, oh, your kids have like a tablet. I said, no, they don't. Do they have do they go on games? I said, they don't. Like, we just got our kids a Nintendo Switch for their 10th birthday.
Yeah.
They don't have tablets. They don't have um, devices. And my thing is we what we talked about is presence. And the things they learn outside the house, they're gonna be influenced by kids at school, friends at school. And they come home, they'll say something, and I'll turn. What'd you just say? and they'll hear someone, but they're picking it up outside the house. And I always say, if what's going on, usually what goes on in the house repeatedly is generally how they operate outside the house. I mean, there's good kids that come from good households that get caught up and they'll I did it when I knew what was expected of me, but I still every
Yeah.
now and then did dumb things because everybody else was doing it, and I thought it was fun to go along with. But I would be influenced outside of the home. Today with technology, they're being influenced 24/7. I mean, and if they're given a device where they're sitting down on the couch because mom and dad are either on their devices or mom and dad, and it's just, I see this disconnect. You go out to a restaurant and you see a table full
Oh
of,
man.
and everyone's buried in their own. And to me, that's incredibly sad. And now we're all we were kind of seeing now the effects of the generation of kids that were born and raised with a tablet in front of them, because now things have been around for 10, 15 years. And now you're getting a lot of the parents who gave their kids the tablets at 2 years old just as a way of keeping their attention on something so they wouldn't get in. And now they're saying it's almost they wish they hadn't. And it's impossible to take it away from them because the kid views it as a punishment even though they didn't do anything
Yep.
wrong. But what it's doing, and like I said, you're giving them access to things that you can try to parent, put these controls on all you want on these devices. Kids find a way around stuff. I know we used to. It wasn't with a device, but parents tried to kid proof a lot of things in the house that me and my buddies figured a way out. I'm sure a way around, and I'm sure
Yeah.
you do too. So I look at it as, are they emotionally ready to handle a lot of the stuff that they have the ability to see? And just with dealing with people on a daily basis who have kids, I hear stories of people whose kids are coming across things and then they're seeing things. And I think we're already kind of, kids are growing up at a faster rate. I think they're seeing more, they're being exposed to more. I don't want it to be taken away too early, I guess, from them. They're the innocence and them, figuring stuff out on their own. Even though they come home and they let me know, well, my friend's got a smartphone, my friend's got this, and I said, I'm not your friend's dad. Your mom's not your friend's mom. Like, these are our rules and these are our house, and they don't argue with it. We give them their game time after they do their homework. We let them do their Nintendo Switch, and they have their games they like to play. But no, I mean, it's might be. I think we live in the best times. You and I, we've remembered when we didn't have any of it,
Right.
but we've also seen the fastest, I think, evolution of advance in technology, because we had the internet was insane to have that, and that really wasn't that long ago. And then now where we've gone with the smartphones, the smart watches, the glass. I mean, everything. It's literally happening at light speed now with the advancements, and it's a blessing and a curse, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Technology has so much great things we can use it for, but I also look at it as most adults can't handle their device consumption and their scrolling, and giving it in the hands of a child who doesn't know, moderation yet. It's just, to me, and I might get shot, but I always call that the people that just give their kids their devices as soon as they get home so the parents can go doing what they want. I call that, I'm always like, it's lazy babysitting. You know,
Yes.
it's going the kid on the floor just scrolling through YouTube or whatever for hours, and I'm like, the stuff they could come across, like I said, regardless of the parental controls, the kids will find things, and what they pick up is what they're going to start to repeat. And at this time, I'm like, yeah, they're 10. They don't need it. I know their friends might have it, but for us right now, I said, Natalie and I have that conversation, and I said, if they're staying after school, they're doing sports or whatever, we need to be, they need rides to be picked up. You get them a phone where they can text or call and stuff like that. But yeah, the social media stuff, I go, there's at the young age, I think it does more harm than good.
Yeah, and it's just the thought of your kids being bored. Like, let your kids experience boredom.
Yeah,
It's while you get out, like you talk about all the stuff that they do outside, but going outside and being like, I have nothing to do. Well, go figure it out.
yeah,
Find something to do. I remember taking the bus to and from school, right? And we didn't have any computer screen in front of us. We just sat there on the bus and you looked out the window, you talked to a friend, you avoided spitballs from the back of the bus,
yeah,
and you looked out the window and you thought about shit. And then
yep,
you're like, all right, there's condensation on the window. wow, I could draw a penis on this condensation on the window here, or
I
like I
could lick
wonder
it.
why this is happening. Like all
Yeah.
these things, these thoughts are going through. And then you mentioned after practice. I have vivid memories of after practice was over, you went and you're like waited for the payphone when there was an actual payphone there,
Yep.
and you'd call collect, and you'd be like, collect message from I'm done to practice, come pick me up. And then
Yep.
you'd hang up,
I did the same thing. Yeah.
and then you had no idea. Then you
You
just
waited for 20
waited.
minutes, maybe
Right.
just
And you're
hoping.
like, I
Yeah.
wonder if they got that message. And you're just there and you're just waiting and you talk to people and you think some more. So that's where the magic happens, in my opinion, for for kids, is like giving them an opportunity to be bored
Yeah.
and to process through, to think about how they think about shit too.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing, Ryan, this will resonate with you. Again, I'm a little bit older, but in the same grown up in the same time frame, back in the 70s and 80s. So I remembered in the 80s, everywhere you went, there was an ashtray.
Oh yeah.
Like you couldn't go anywhere without there being an ashtray. Like there's like pictures of my family. Like my younger sister had a birthday party at McDonald's when she was like 5, right? And there's people smoking at the indoor like little playground that they had at McDonald's, smoking
Yeah.
cigarettes at with all these kids around inside. But then eventually it became a thing, like that's not acceptable anymore. Right?
Mhm.
Smoking is still, people still smoke, but it's not
Yep.
acceptable to smoke inside, especially at a McDonald's with a playground at a freaking kid's birthday party.
Right.
But now it's become so prevalent where when I go out with my kids, it's phones off in the truck. Like we're not even bringing them into, if
Yeah.
we're going out to spend time as a family, not only is it going to cost $150 to go out to dinner as a
Yeah.
family, there's 6 or 7 of us going out. Like we're going to spend that time communicating and talking. We're not going to
Yeah.
have our hands buried in a phone. So when I see parents, it it really it's so disheartening. But what has to happen is it has to be socially unacceptable for the things like that to happen. Like right now, if I went into a restaurant and I'm like, hey, I'm gonna light up a cigarette right now, people would look at me like, are you kidding me? Get out of here. Like it would
Yeah.
be anarchy. It would be
Oh
like a
yeah.
woman who's pregnant, taking shots or drinking a
Yep.
beer. We need to get to a point as a society where we do not accept that. Like it needs to
Yep.
be unacceptable for things like that to
Yep.
happen.
For sure. I agree. I agree.
um so one thing I want to, well, before I move on to what you're doing now, Ron, I'd love for you to give a piece of advice to a young man who's listening, or the parent of a young man who's listening. Take like a middle school, high school age range. What's something that a kid at that age level should be doing if they, if they have any idea about doing something in the, competitive fitness space. What's something that they can incorporate right now?
Getting, doing something that every day is gonna, elevate your heart rate, get you to just doing hard things, and it can go further than just doing a workout. Like read a book. Getting up. I have a lot of kids that I'll train now that are between that middle school, high school, college age, and a lot of them they are. I mean, I talk to them about getting out, meeting up with friends, and their meetups are usually done with the phone. They go, well, they don't. There's not as much meeting up as there was. A lot of
Right.
kids aren't even getting their driver's license until they're 18 or 19 years old, and I'm like, when I was 16, I couldn't wait to get my driver's license. That was my freedom. I could go out with my buddies whenever
Yes.
I wanted to. Um, but not shying away from things that have potential for failure. I think we've gotten to a point now where we don't want the kids to feel, sad. We don't want them to feel left out. So we tend to try to not let them do things that are going to cause them failure. And I said, failure is involved. Like we touched on earlier. You're going to fail, and you're gonna fall, smash into the tree,
Yeah.
regardless at some point. And so the more you can kind of dig into doing the hard things, and if all your friends are sleeping in until 10 o'clock and staying up, I try to tell the kids. I say, I talk to the parents as well. I'm like, get up before 9 a.m. on a Saturday. Go out and take a walk. Go out, maybe go for a run, and get this energy out, because it is. I mean, it's energy is so reciprocated. You don't get it by waiting. You only get it by giving it. And so, I try to get the parents on board as well with the kids, where it's like, it's in a world and in a day and age where the majority of the boys and the majority of the kids aren't doing it. Be the one that does. Be the one that goes home a little earlier. Be the one that gets up a little bit earlier. Be the one that doesn't jump in on the picking if you're picking on somebody. Be the one that stands up, and says it's not right. But I would say, like, dare to be the different one, dare to be the one that's doing things that other kids might be afraid to do in a good way. Not that it's afraid because they're gonna get in trouble, but afraid because it's hard, and do hard things, and not shying away from something because there's a risk of failure
Right.
that comes with it. So
And as a kid, psychologically, it's tough to get yourself to that point where it's so easy to take the road of comfort, right? Doing the
yeah,
other road is hard. It's hard, but it's like
it's easy
choose
for
your hard.
adults. Yeah,
Yeah.
adults do it. I work every day with, and that's the thing. It's leaning into the
Yep.
hardship, and the mind is a comforter, but it's also a problem solver. The mind's job is to keep you as comfortable and safe as possible. But there's also a fine line. It likes to solve problems. It's a problem solving machine. And so I say, go out and challenge yourself. Read a book. Learn something new for these young kids. Don't stay comfortable being the same today as you were yesterday or as you were last week. But this is something that I haven't even really. I haven't. I started diving into probably in my 30s more. The physical part was always the easier part, but my uncomfortableness was the getting into the inside, the internal, the mind, and going to war with. We all have demons. We've all got trauma that we've experienced. Getting inside that, and working through it, not constantly trying to avoid it. And I talk to that with my kids when they come home if they have an issue, so they don't want to talk about it. I said, well, if you ignore it, it might go away tonight, and you might not think about it tomorrow, but at some point it's going to rear its ugly head and it's going to be bigger. That dragon inside, it gets bigger the more you ignore it,
Right.
and it follows you until you're into adulthood. So um no, trying to dive into that discomfort, that hardship. And that's the great thing with what exercise and fitness does. And that's what every workout is. It's going till you don't want to go anymore and going a little bit further. And you come out feeling like, okay, like I pushed through and I was able to go more than I could. And it's the same with, every day, especially with kids, but all they know is what they know at their young age. So in their mind, it's, I took away Liam's and Grant's Nintendo a few weeks ago. They stood at the top of the steps and yelled down at me, "This is the worst day of my life." And I was like, okay, well, like, from a 41-year-old, this is a good, like, that, if this is as bad as it gets, this is good. I go,
Right.
but they only know what they've experienced. They only know what they know. So, and I tell them that. I said, well, life's going to hand you a lot more of these days, except it's not going to be your Nintendo. It's going to be other things. And so
Yeah.
get used to it because it's going to come regardless.
I would be like, you know what? If my kids yelled that same thing down to me, I'd be like, in 30 years, I hope this is still true. I
Well,
really hope in 30 years that this was the worst day of your life.
I've had that with kids. Like I said, the high school, college kids age. They're 17, 18, and they're still in high school, and they're describing to me all the same problems I had. Which when I was 17, as a 17-year-old, I've lived
Yeah.
17 years. This is the worst it's ever been. 17 is the worst. 18 is the worst. And I tell them all the time when they're sitting there, because I was there, you were there. I
Yeah.
said, at 41, I said, I would give my freaking left pinky to have my 17-year-old problems be the worst thing in my life right now. Like, they're gonna, like, it's good. Like, and I tell them, I'd say, I know you don't understand it, how this is a good thing. Like, feeling this shitty can be a good thing. It's not a good thing now, but like, do what needs to get done to get past this. You'll be able to handle big, because you have to. You're going to need to handle
Yes.
your stuff in your 20s and your 30s and your 40s. You don't have the responsibilities now that you're going to have, and the more responsibilities you have as you get older, the more you have to lose, and that's when you really start to get the stress. And if you can teach them to manage their stress and their anxiety now, that's only going to serve dividends in the future as they get older. So
It's like building capacity, right? The first time a kid is going to bench, they don't, lay down on the bench and throw 315 on the bar. They put 95 on the bar.
yep.
If they keep going with it, eventually they might have the capacity to lift a heavier weight. But it's the same thing with life's problems. Like
Yeah,
as a high schooler, you're unable to deal with the heaviness of whatever that stress is in your future.
yeah, yeah.
But as you go through those challenging situations, you build the capacity, much like you would put fives on each side of
Yeah,
the bar for a long period of time.
yeah.
I want to dive a little bit into the psychology piece. You talked when we first started about your role as a trainer has become, you recognize the importance of the mind body connection and the mindset piece along with it, and it's a huge thing. I remember watching the show The Biggest Loser back in the day.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't know if it's still running or whatever, but they would a lot of the people that were on the show, they were there to win the money, right? And so they didn't never healed whatever the psychological reasons were for the weight gain in the first place. And what they said was they would lose weight to get down to the final, and they would go out on stage and talk about their journey. And like a huge percentage of the contestants put the weight back on again after the show was over because they never really dealt with whatever it was. So as you're working with a client, how much of your time is spent inside of their brain rather than just on the body piece?
Honestly, I would say over half, 50, 70%. I mean,
Yeah.
they're doing the workout, but we dive into, how's your sleep? How's your stress? How's work? And that's the thing I said, a weak, cracked mind will eventually take over and damage a body. I mean, I've seen people that were in physically great shape, mentally in bad places. They didn't physically, they looked super healthy, but mentally, over time, it overtook their physicality. They got sick, they got tight, they started getting injured, and when your mind is under so much stress and duress, your nervous system goes completely whack. And your body's ability to heal your physically after workouts, your body's ability to get quality sleep, that stuff all takes a back seat. And so, diving into what's stressing you out, and having the hard conversations, whether it's with a coworker or a loved one or whatever, the psychology piece, I said with in relation to what we talked about, your mind can take your body to amazing
Yeah.
places. Um, everyone's body, doing an Ironman sucks. It's physically the most exhausting thing you can do. But that's you have to be able to get to a point where your mind can tell your body pretty much not to shut up, but that you're capable of more. And I always say, don't think, just do. And that's a lot of times, if you go through these trainings, and I say a lot of times what stops people from succeeding is because they usually don't even start. Most people, when they first come see me, it's an appointment and it's scheduled, and it takes them, they'll cancel, they'll
Yeah.
cancel. Walk in the door for the first time, and they're like, honestly, just getting here was like the hardest thing. After they've had that workout, they go, the workout was great, but getting here, I said, it's starting that is what keeps most people back. They don't even start. They're so afraid of failing in the beginning that the fear and the panic of what could happen prevents them from even starting right now. Um, and like you said, it's like building that. You start at 95 pounds. It's building that mental capacity, that reserve, the strength and the conditioning for the mind. Just as you do, it's like, I can do hard shit, and then all of a sudden you have them do a little bit more, and you build them up. And everyone's different, everyone has a different story. I have people that have come from horrible experiences. You treat them a little bit differently. I have people that are go-getters. They're good. They're just like, hey man, like, give me all you got, and I
Yeah.
can push them. You gotta, when to push and when to peel back a little bit more. But um the one thing I love the most, not oh, I like the way I look better. Right? They go, I feel, when I hear someone say, I feel so much better. I'm thinking more clearly. I'm more calm around my kids. I'm more calm around my wife. I'm sleeping better.
Right.
My thought process, that, that when you get to that point mentally, the physical part takes care of itself. And that's the thing. I said, we work so hard physically to change physically, but if you're not changing and growing and adapting mentally, the physical part will eventually fail you, because you will get older, your body will change. But if you can develop and continue to, the mind is a never ending muscle that we can always continue to improve on. And that's where I look at it as like, yeah, your body will and may fail you at some point. um, but with your mind, I mean, as long as you keep things in perspective, I mean, it's life is a joyous ride, no matter how old you get, whatever your limitations are. It's keeping that mindset of today's what I got, and I'm going to do the best with it. So
Is there a recommendation that you would make, one, and it could be of any fitness level, but a physical practice that people can do on a regular basis. And then if there is one, a mental practice that people can do. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, it might be practicing, a gratitude journal as a mental practice. So is there a
Mhm.
physical practice and a mental practice that someone could incorporate?
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of the early risers.
Yeah.
I read the 5 a.m. Club, all the books that they list the top performers and what do they all have in common, and it's they all have that uninterrupted time. And for you, you said it. Yours is in the morning.
Yeah.
Mine's in the morning as well. And for me, there's no other time. I mean, I don't care if people say, "Well, I can do stuff at the end of the day." My stuff. I said, at the end of the day, you're operating from like a 20 to 30% battery. If at best. Whereas the morning, getting out of bed an hour earlier and just first thing out of bed is you get movement in, whether that's you go for a walk. I do usually 20 minutes. I do my yoga. I put my music. I'll have meditation music on, and I go through kind of like a full body stretch, foam roll, wake up my body that way, and then I focus on deep breathing, meditative type breathing, and as I'm breathing, like you said, the gratitude, I'm running through my mind, you know, everything I have in my life that I'm grateful for. And even if it's the same thing every day, starting every day off with just saying, I'm blessed to have this. I'm grateful to have that.
Yeah.
And then after that, setting my intentions, which, like you said, is usually done through journaling. I used to journal. This is how I felt yesterday. Now more or less I'm spelling out my intentions with what today, this I'm going to be more present with my children today. I'm going to I'm not picking my phone up the first 2 hours after I wake up. I'm going to I'm going to give a compliment to every stranger I pass. When you make things visual, and then after I write them, I'll reread them, and it's just like anything, you retain it by constant repetition. And then after that, I try to spend an hour, and an hour could be a cold shower, a cold bath, something that's going to kind of, it's like I always call it like the exclamation point on the end, of my day, and then it's a shower, and I'm ready to go, and then I get a good hearty breakfast that I've made, and by that point, at least in my house, my wife's getting up, but I've had that hour,
Yeah.
and however you spend it, whether it's writing out plans for business, your mind is operating sharp, super sharp, and by doing the exercise first, you get the endorphin rush, your mind, you're firing on all sorts of endorphins, and your mind is sharp, ready to go, and you have no noise from the outside world yet. But the other thing I'll go back is not touching devices, but that's so the first thing we do is the alarm goes off. If we have an alert, we check it. And that's one thing I've gotten and I continue to try to improve on is making sure the phone gets zero access until that hour, which is my time, is completed. So,
I love that. And the
yep.
journaling piece too is for young men to pick up a blank notebook or something and start journaling. It is like pulling teeth.
Oh yeah.
There's this like, oh, that sucks. I don't want to have a diary and this and that. And
Mhm.
I tell them, I'm like, here's the thing. Like, if I could give myself any piece of advice for when I was your age, is to start writing down my thoughts on a regular basis. Not only does it help you in so many ways, just process through your thoughts. You start to see patterns in your thinking. You start to understand certain things that could be little devils on your shoulder that keep popping up. But then you also recognize, like, okay, there's something here I want to dive in deeper to and investigate further. The other thing that it does is it records in a time stamped fashion how you felt when you were 13, 14, 18, 25, 20. Like, I wish I could go back and read the things that I thought about when I
Yep.
was that age. Like, was I thinking that my Nintendo getting taken away was the worst thing that would ever happen in the history of the world? Right.
Yeah.
And I wish I could go back
Yep.
and read my thoughts around that age range.
Well, and that's, and I don't want to interrupt, but that's like you said, it's just like tracking your workouts.
Yeah.
If you track your workouts, how do you see progress? By going back and having, recording of what you did, and you can go back and say, progress comes really, really, really slow. Big progress comes really slow, and that's where I went back and I have a journal that I had from like 4 years ago, and I just came upon it and I flipped it open and I read it and I was like, holy shit, like this was some deep, dark, like this was stuff that I was like looking at. I'm going like, it's almost like I didn't even recognize who was writing this.
Right.
But over the 4 years, I'll talk with my wife a lot because she's my number one. We talk all the time about this, and she'll give me the motivation, like, Ryan, like, I can see, like, she's like, you've worked really hard, and I go, but I don't really see it. But then again, I go, well, I sound like clients now that I've trained. Like, well, I'm not
Yeah.
seeing it. I'm like, you're never gonna see it because you're with yourself all day, every day. But then when I went back there and I go, okay, I go back 4 years ago and I look up and I read yesterday's, entry, and I go, holy crap, okay, over 4 years, now you see it. And that's the thing, like getting in shape, getting stronger. Yeah, if you go look at yesterday's strength workout to tomorrow or even next week, you're not going to really see anything. But to go back, like you said, revisionist history
Right.
with these kids to go back, and I get it, when they're 17, 16, to them it's like homework. It's
Right.
asking them to do one more thing. But to have that and you'll be able to go back, and I always tell people, you shouldn't recognize the person from 5 years ago, like, or at least you should say, wow, like, that was, because that means that there's been change, there's been positive growth, unless you're a bigger asshole, which hopefully that's not the case.
Right.
But usually, no, you're looking back. I go, it should be borderline unrecognizable within those 5 years, and that's what the power of and the importance of that journaling does, is it gives you that track record.
And there is no change, and if it's exactly the same, that should be the feedback you need. That should smack in the face like a wet rubber hose, like, hey man, like, start to get moving. Like, now is the time.
Yeah,
They say the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago,
yeah,
and the second best time to plant a tree is today.
yeah,
Right? Like, no, like, use that
for
as
sure.
information to
Yeah,
move forward.
yeah.
So I mean, you mentioned that the Ironman, everything you're doing with the ultra marathons and the running and all that. What's the thing that right now is getting you the most fired up that you cannot wait to, like, all right, this is the thing for me right now?
As far as like race wise, I don't really have anything huge on the on the calendar. Got a couple small things, but the thing I'm fired up about, I had a talk with the client, and she's in psychology as well. Is the thing that all the ultra endurance stuff showed me, is that that you can only get so strong. Eventually, like I said, as we age, like your body, you're not always going to be able to bench 300 pounds. What the strength and the conditioning of being a better person, that's something that could never,
Right.
that's limitless. You can always get better as a person, you can always get stronger emotionally, spiritually, mentally. And so now I look at that as, my morning routine, and trying to, create my best version of myself every single day. That's what lights me on fire, is knowing that, well, like, yeah, I can bench press till I'm blue in the face. And eventually I'm going to reach a point where I can't go past. And then it's going to have to just be acceptance that I'm going to get weaker. Whereas with developing mental strength, emotional, spiritual, that's limitless. And
Right.
so now I wake up with a passion, thinking, and when you start to feel that improvement, just the energy and the joy of life it gives you, you appreciate every single day that much more. Those you appreciate every relationship that much more, um, because you're putting the practice in that gives you, the greatest sense of who you are, who you're meant to be, and that, even if you're not where you want to be today, sky's the limit for
Right.
tomorrow and a year from now. So, but like I said, it's kind of changed from the physical. The physical part I always need. That's my medicine. But that, I always say, take your medicine, work out every day. But the growing of the person, not just outside the physical form, to me is what's been kind of like my thing I'm looking forward to most with training. So
And that's awesome. And that is not a timestamp thing. That is one,
yeah,
it's continuous. I love that,
yeah,
Ryan. That's a cool, I like that answer. That's a cool answer. First time I've gotten that answer
yeah.
to that question. So before I ask you my last question, where do the audience of the Billy Man podcast find you? How do we get in touch with you?
So you can get me on a website, trainforlife.us. I have a full website. It's got, booking options. Like I said, I do predominantly all my work is one-on-one training, small group in-person training, but I'm doing online coaching, stuff like that. And then I have a Facebook page under Train for Life Strength Conditioning. And then there's a Instagram page, which I run again for the gym. That's Train for Life Fitness on Instagram. But those are the three primary ways people can reach me. Emails are linked up to all those as well. So
Awesome.
no shortages of ways to get in touch if they need to.
Awesome. And we'll put all that information out in the show notes. Last question, Ryan, is if someone's listening to this episode and they've got a ton of value already from all the advice, the suggestions, recommendations, they press stop right now, what's one thing that they can do? And by doing this one thing, it will really change the trajectory of their life.
I think the morning routine.
Yeah.
I think that's the key. Your day is set in motion by your morning, and we see so much the day gets away from people, and it's usually because you let the day take control of you. So if you're going to take anything away, I would say, you know, take every day, take life on your terms, and that means getting out of bed before the world necessarily outside of your house needs you. Get up when you need you, and when you can put your focus on yourself. And when you start your day that way, and it doesn't have to be an hour, it can be 10 minutes that you get up earlier and you do jumping jacks, push-ups, and you do a little bit of reading, and then you build onto that. But the number one thing that I've seen truly change not just my life, but clients that have had the biggest success and maintained it have been people that have implemented that morning routine, and that just jump starts and ignites the fire in you, and that's what gets the mind frame in a good place to go take on that day and make that day productive, make the promises in the morning to yourself, and then follow through and see those throughout the day. So morning routine, definitely number one.
Awesome. Good advice, dude.
Yes,
Ryan,
sir.
it was great having you on again, man. We'll do this
I
again.
loved it.
Let's not wait 3 years
Hopefully not.
next time.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll
yeah,
definitely keep in touch. I would love to hear about your boys' journey, what they're up to, and then
for
if
sure.
anything, if I could support in any way.
Awesome.
So, building an audience, go check out all of Ryan Derstine's stuff. All that information will be in the show notes. If you got any level of value from this episode, consider rating it, reviewing it, and more than anything, sharing it out with anyone that you think might benefit from the message. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Go one step further than you thought you could go. We will see you next time on Building Men.